question I got here is, what is your recommendation on managing executive identities in large companies or with a global presence? I found executive assistants with photocopies of president's passport's ID, and there seems to be multiple points of loss for large targets. So these whales, right, as we call them in cybersecurity.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Who are these people? These are great questions.
These cybersecurity professionals. These guys are in the field. They're either one dive-in students hungry for information or experts in the field. We got them all.
These are excellent questions. These are excellent. These are skin in the game questions, which I really like. So executives are a big target for a couple of reasons. One is, a lot of times executives that have been in certain companies, they may have moved up in the ranks. So let's say they started in one job and moved to another job. And a lot of times their permissions, instead of their permissions changing for the job they have, they just sort of snowball. So they end up having access to a lot of stuff that maybe they shouldn't have access to. And then two, when you get executives, sometimes the rules within an organization are different for them. So let's say your organization says that employees need to have a mailbox no bigger than 2 gigabytes. And so the executives may get a thing where, well, their mailbox is unlimited, so they can do whatever. So they end up they collect more data, they have more data. They end up having more access to stuff that they shouldn't have. A lot of times the executives, they may have like an assistant or someone that's helping them with their work, where that person may have access to their email or, whatever other account information that may be sensitive in nature. And then hackers like to target those people because they know that at times those people may like acquiesce to maybe like a request that's made, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Social. What is the word I'm looking for?
Social engineer.
Yeah, social engineering. Yep. Very susceptible to social engineering, mostly because of the shenanigans that happen within corporate America.
Right.
So, like, I had a friend who was saying, you read in a newspaper, oh, this company lost $400,000 because they got a call from someone that said that the CEO wanted them to transfer something at 4:00 in the morning. And so for people, just regular people reading that in the news, they say, oh, why didn't that person know that? I'm like, this actually happens in organizations. So it's not actually that crazy that someone would do this or would follow that, because a lot of times that's the way it is. And then two, sometimes a person who's at a lower level may be afraid to question those types of requests. So I think people who have nefarious nature and is trying to take advantage, they take advantage of sort of all those kind of crazy things that happen within organizations. I would say executives need to be following, whatever rule there is for the company about, like, say, changing passwords or, and I've seen that one where like a higher level executive, they want their password to be super easy, almost like a vanity plate on their car. So, So then they have these email boxes that are enormous. They have these assistants that are afraid to ask them questions. They have possibly very oversimplified passwords. They're very public in terms of kind of their movement. Sometimes they may even betray their passwords just by talking about themselves. So let's say they're on social media and they're like, oh, my dog's name is Dusty.
Right.
So the person, hacker may say, well, this, his dog is named Dusty. Let me try variations of Dusty. And, bam, they may be into their account. So those are all things that I've experienced or, learned from working with executives. So it's funny because when I work with companies, especially when I work with them and I'm asking them about how they retain their data, I have to really question them about what happens with the executives and how they're being treated differently and why that's creates a cyber risk for the company.
Right. And I think to add on to that, I think one of the things that you have to look at if you're looking at, you're managing executives is look at your acceptable use policy, right? Training, cybersecurity awareness training for the staff, the executives, the assistants, and making sure that there's areas and points where if you have, the president's password and ID, they're in secure areas that's encrypted. So even if they get compromised, that, data is actually harder to compromise, if they do. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible, especially now with quantum computers right now. There's a big discussion in kind of the security environment about what's going on with quantum computers and encryption. But you're doing that's generally best practices. And you're saying there was multiple points of failure or loss for targets like this. Everything that Debbie said is I completely agree with. And then just adding on to it is like those points, and then just going through training, making sure they're well aware, because I don't know if you knew this, Debbie. I was doing a dark web scan for my organizations that I work for. And a lot of times when you do the scans, it's the executives that now are getting caught because they're, like you said, they're out on different sites of networking sites and different, presentations and things like that. And those sites are getting compromised, and they're using their work address, the work email address that now can tie them back into their actual organization. So it's just kind of full loop, right? Versus using a generic Gmail account for these ones and the work address for work, right?
Totally. Yeah, I highly recommend people when they have social media accounts and stuff that they use a different login or different email than their work email. I highly recommend it.